背中つけ Still with me うなずいた影火花の群れが未来を試す足音は誓いを響かせる迷わないさ笑う横顔背中つけろ熱が交わる崩れる世界も燃える奇跡も一緒なら恐れは灰になる Rise ignition 鼓動が合図だ揺るぎない Flame Reignite the game 果てを越えてゆけ Rise ignition 君となら叫べる永遠より強い Bond We shine as one Good morning. Oh, I hope. Morning, everyone. Let me move some. Hold on. Hold that thought. I found a new song, guys. And I think it fits Sherlock Holmes very well if I don't say so myself. Hopefully, OBS will pick it up this time. Arm real quick. Oh, I need to change the size now. Hold that thought. I can't have it at 300%. All right. So today we'll be continuing the Valley of Fear. Obviously it's Sherlock Holmes. I don't have to say that, right? So we are still our part 1. We read through the first. Holy shit, spider. 2 seconds, guys. I don't know where it went. I knocked it down. Now, did this bitch fall on the floor? Did this bitch fall on my my keyboard? I don't know. I don't like it. Well, in case I see it, I'm gonna have this vacuum by me. Yeah, that's a great idea. This vacuum's gonna be right in my arm reach. uh Yeah. Um, um, that spider got dangerously close to me. Um, uh, I don't know where it is. Uh, um, I don't see it on the carpet. I don't see it on the table. I maybe it's safe. Is it safe? I don't. Checking my headphones. Checking this book. Safe. As I mentioned, I do not like bugs. Fictional books, yes, I'm okay with. Actual books, absolutely fucking not. They need to stay at a distance from me. Bitch, do I need to deep clean my room again? I think I found it, guys. It's about to be dead in 5 seconds. Bitch, where you going? Oh, okay. I'm okay now. Crisis averted. Um, did I say crisis averted? Give me like 2 seconds. I will redo my intro later. After I get rid of the other. Yeah. I'll be right back.
君の笑顔は消えやしない守りたいのは今と未来と君たちのその輝き永遠なんて言葉はいらない積み重ねた日々が証だから一人じゃないんだ何度でも言うよ愛してるずっと変わらず言葉をぶつけ合った日々も沈黙が重たくなる夜も同じ屋根の下で眠り朝はまた君の隣から始まるすれ違っても一つの空雲は流れてやがて晴れる見捨てたりはしない愛は消えない君たちと歩いてゆく成長する背中を見送り遠くなる声にと
I have returned, and I've got rid of the evidence. I was also telling my father how I said I almost screamed when I saw the spider in front of me, but that really it was almost unexpectedly. I said, ah! I don't like bugs, especially if it's like spiders or centipedes or anything with legs. And within like a couple inches from me, absolutely not. You're all gonna die. Oh, anyway. Hello, Vangelis, how are you? Okay, I have to redo my introduction. Before that spider suddenly appeared in front of me. And I started panicking. Okay, so let me have my phone with my dad, so he's going to text me when he needs help, actually. So, today we're going to be continuing the Valley of Fear, the Sherlock Holmes novel. We were still on part 1. We read through the first 4 chapters. So it's for a recap for those of you who weren't here last week, or who didn't see the VOD. Pretty much Sherlock Holmes got this this letter in the mail. Pretty much it was a message, but it was coded. And then they pretty much figured out without the cipher. And it turns out it was saying like this guy named Douglas was in danger, right? So pretty much that's how far they got. And then the inspector came asking for them because there was a murder that happened. Then they need his assistance, only to find out that, lo and behold, the guy Douglas from their message is dead. Yes, he was murdered. So, then he started talking about his arch nemesis, Moriarty. I think that's how you say it. I probably have to use Google Translate just to remember how to say that again. But yeah. So now they went and traveled to the mansion. To figure out to see what's going on. And that's pretty much where we left off. I'm doing well. How are you? So yeah, that's pretty much where we left off. My tea is still very hot. So other note that they did mention in the first 4 chapters, he is missing his ring. He has this branding on one of his arms, and his head was pretty much blown off. So they're trying to figure out who the killer is, essentially. And then at the end of chapter 4, they found a bicycle, pretty much. And now they're wondering, how did the killer get away? All right. So I guess we could go ahead and start chapter 5. Until my father texts me, then I'll have to stop and help him real quick. So, chapter 5. The people of the drama. Have you seen all you want of the study? Asked White Mason as we re-entered the house. For the time, said the inspector, and Holmes nodded. Then perhaps you would now like to hear the evidence on some of the people in the house? You could use the dining room, MS. Please come yourself first and tell us what you know. The butler's account was a simple and a clear one, and he gave a convincing impression of sincerity. He had been engaged 5 years before, when Douglas first came to Burlstone. He understood that Mr. Douglas was a rich gentleman who had made his money in America. He had been a kind and considerate employer, not quite what MS was used to, perhaps, but one can have everything. He never saw any signs of apprehension in Mr. Douglas. On the contrary, he was the most fearless man he had ever known. He ordered the drawbridge to be pulled up every night because it was the ancient custom of the old house, and he liked to keep the old ways up. Mr. Douglas soon went to London, or left the village, but on the day before the crime, he had been shopping at Tunbridge Wells. He, amiss, had observed some restlessness and excitement on the part of Mr. Douglas that day, for he had seemed impatient and irritable, which was unusual with him. He had not gone to bed that night, but was in the pantry at the back of the house, putting away the silver when he heard the bell ring violently. He heard no shot, but it was hardly possible he would, as the pantry and the kitchens were at the very back of the house, and there were several closed doors and a long passage between. The housekeeper had come out of her room, attracted by the violent ringing of the bell. They had gone to the front of the house together. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, he had seen Miss Douglas coming down it. No, she was not hurrying. It did not seem to him that she was particularly agitated. Just as she reached the bottom of the stairs, Mr. Barker had rushed out of the study. He had stopped Miss Douglas and begged her to go back. For God's sake, go back to your room, he cried. Poor Jack is dead. You can do nothing. For God's sake, go back. After some persuasion upon the stairs, Miss Douglas had gone back. She did not scream. She made no outcry, whatever. Miss Allen, the housekeeper, had taken her upstairs and stayed with her in the bedroom. Miss and Mr. Barker had then returned to the study, where they had found everything exactly as the police had seen it. The candle was not lit at that time, but the lamp was burning. They had looked out of the window, but the night was very dark, and nothing could be seen or heard. They had then rushed out into the hall, where Miss had turned the windlass, which lowered the drawbridge. Mr. Barker had then hurried off to get the police. Such in its essentials was the evidence of the butler. The account of Miss Allen, the housekeeper, was so far as it went a corroboration of that of her fellow servant. The housekeeper's room was rather nearer to the front of the house than the pantry, in which Miss had been working. She was preparing to go to bed when the loud ringing of the bell had attracted her attention. She was a little hard of hearing. Perhaps that was why she had not heard the shot. But in any case, the study was a long way off. She remembered hearing some sound, which she imagined to be the slamming of a door. That was a good deal earlier, half an hour at least before the ring of the bell. When Mr. Hermes ran to the front, she went with him. She saw Mr. Barker, very pale and excited, came out of the study. He intercepted Miss Douglas, who was coming down the stairs. He entreated her to go back, and she answered him, but what she said could not be heard. Take her up, stay with her, he said. He had said to Miss Allen. She had therefore taken her to the bedroom, and devoured to soothe her. She was greatly excited, trembling all over, but made no other attempt to go downstairs. She just sat in her dressing gown by her bedroom fire, with her head sunk in her hands. Miss Allen stayed with her most of the night. As to the other servants, they had all gone to bed, and the alarm did not reach them until just before the police arrived. They slept at the extreme back of the house and could not possibly have heard anything. So far, the housekeeper could add nothing on the cross-examination, save lamentations and expressions of amazement. Cecilia Barker succeeded Miss Allen as a witness. As to the occurrences of the night before, he had very little to add to what he had already told the police. Personally, he was convinced that the murderer had escaped by the window. The bloodstain was conclusive, in his opinion, on that point. Besides, as the bridge was up, there was no other possible way of escaping. He could not explain what had become of the assassin, or why he had not taken his bicycle, if it were indeed his. He could not possibly have been drowned in the moat, which was at no place more than 3 feet deep. In his own mind, he had a very definite theory about the murder. Douglas was a prescient man, and there were some chapters in his life of which he never spoke. He had immigrated to America when he was a very young man. He had prospered well, and Barker had first met him in California, where they had become partners in a successful mining claim at a place called Benito Canyon. they had done very well, but Douglas had suddenly sold out and started for England. He was a widower at the time. Barker had afterwards realized his money and came to live in London. Thus, they had renewed their friendship. Douglas had given him the impression that some danger was hanging over his head, and he had always looked upon his sudden departure from California. And also, his renting a house in so quiet a place in England as being connected with his peril. He imagined that some secret society, some inexplicable organization was on Douglas's track, which would never rest until it killed him. Some remarks of his had given him this idea, though he had never told him what the society was, nor how he had come to offend it. He could only suppose that the legend upon the placard had some reference to this secret society. Well, considering the card said VV, it's not the Ku Klux Klan like in the other story. So it has to mean something else. How long were you with Douglas in California? Asked Inspector MacDonald. 5 years altogether. He was a bachelor, you say? A widower. Have you ever heard where his first wife came from? No. I remember his saying that she was a German extraction, and I have seen her portrait. She was a very beautiful woman. She died of I what is that? Typhoid? Typhoid? The year before I met him. You don't associate his past with any particular part of America? I have heard him talk of Chicago. He knew that city well and had worked there. I have heard him talk of the coal and iron districts. He had traveled a good deal in his time. Was he a politician? Had the secret society to do with politics? No, he cared nothing about politics. You have no reason to think it was a criminal? On the contrary, I never met a straighter man in my life. Was there anything curious about his life in California? He liked best to stay and to work at our claim in the mountains. He would never go where other men were if he could help it. That's why I first thought that someone was after him. Then when he left so suddenly for Europe, I made sure that it was so. I believe that he had a warning of some sort. Within a week of his leaving, 6 men were inquiring for him. What sort of men? Well, they were a mighty hard-looking crowd. They came up to the claim and wanted to know where he was. I told him that he was gone to Europe, and I did not know where to find him. They meant him no good. It was easy to see that. Were these men Americans? Californians? Well, I don't know about Californians. They were Americans, all right, but they were not minors. I don't know what they were. I was very glad to see their backs. That was 6 years ago? They were 7. And then you were together 5 years in California, so that this business dates back not less than 11 years at the least. That is so. Must be a very serious feud that would be kept up with such earnestness, for as long as that. It would be no light thing that would give rise to it. I think it shadowed his whole life. It was never quite out of his mind. But if a man had a danger hanging over him and knew what it was, don't you think he would turn to the police for protection? Maybe it was some danger that he could not be protected against. There's one thing you should know. He always went about armed. His revolver was never out of his pocket. But by bad luck, he was in his dressing gown and had left it in the bedroom last night. Once the bridge was up, I guess he thought he was safe. I should like these dates a little clearer, said MacDonald. It is quite 6 years since Douglas left California. You followed him next year, did you not? That is so. And he had been married 5 years? Must have returned about the time of his marriage. About a month before. I was his best man. Did you know Miss Douglas before her marriage? No, I did not. I have been away from England for 10 years. But you have seen a good deal of her since. Barker looked sternly at the detective. I have seen a good deal of him since, he answered. If I have seen her, it's because you cannot visit a man without knowing his wife. If you imagine there is any connection. I imagine nothing, Mr. Barker. I am bound to make every inquiry which can bear upon the case, but I mean no offense. Some inquiries are offensive, Barker answered angrily. It's only the facts that we want. It is in your interest and everyone's interest that they should be cleared up. Did Mr. Douglas entirely approve your friendship with his wife? Barker grew pale, and his great strong hands were clamped convulsively together. You have no right to ask such questions, he cried. What has this to do with the matter you're investigating? I must repeat the question. Well, I refuse to answer. You can refuse to answer, but you must be aware that your refusal is in itself an answer, for you would not refuse if you had not something to conceal. Barker stood for a moment with his face set grimly and his strong black eyebrows drawn low in intense thought. Then he looked up with a smile. Well, I guess you just weren't only doing your clear duty after all, and I have no right to stand in the way of it. I'd only ask you to not worry Miss Douglas over this matter, for she has enough upon her just now. I might tell you that poor Douglas had just one fault in the world, and that was his jealousy. He was fond of me. No man could be fonder of a friend. And he was devoted to his wife. He loved me to come here and was forever sending for me. And yet, if his wife and I talked together, or there seemed any sympathy between us, a kind of wave of jealousy would pass over him, and he would be off the handle and saying the wildest things in a moment. More than once, I've sworn off coming for that reason, and then he would write me such penitence, imploring letters that I just had to. But you could take it from me, gentlemen, if it was my last word, that no man ever had a more loving, faithful wife. And I can say also, no friend could be more loyal than I. It was spoken with fever and feeling, and yet Inspector MacDonald could not dismiss the subject. Are you aware, said he, that the dead man's wedding ring has been taken from his finger? So it appears, said Barker. Oh, what do you mean by appears? You know it as a fact. The man seemed confused and undecided. When I said appears, I mean that it was conceivable that he had himself taken off the ring. The mere fact that the ring could be absent, whoever may have removed it, would suggest to anyone's mind, and would it not, that the marriage and the tragedy were connected? Parker shrugged his broad shoulders. I can't profess to say what it means, he answered, but if you mean to hint that it could reflect in any way upon his lady's honor. His eyes blazed for an instant, and then, with an evident effort, he got a grip upon his own emotions. Well, you're on the wrong track, that's all. I don't know that I have anything else to ask you at present, said McDonald coldly. There was one small point, remarked Sherlock Holmes. When you entered the room, there was only a candle lighted on the table, was there not? Yes, that was so. By its light, you saw that some terrible incident had occurred? Exactly. You at once rang for help? Yes. And it arrived very speedily? Within minutes or so. And yet, when they arrived, they found that the candle was out and that the lamp had been lighted. That seems very remarkable. Again, Barker showed some signs of indecision. I don't see that it was remarkable, Mr. Holmes, he answered after a pause. The candle threw a very bad light. My first thought was to get a better one. The lamp was on the table, so I lit it. And blew out the candle? Exactly. Holmes asked no further question, and Barker, with a deliberate look from one to the other of us, which had, as it seemed to me, something of defiance in it, turned and left the room. Inspector McDonald had sent up a note to the effect that he would wait upon Miss Douglas in her room, but she had replied that she would meet us in the dining room. She entered now, a tall and beautiful woman of 30, reserved and self-possessed to a remarkable degree. Very different from the tragic and distracted figure I had pictured. It is true that her face was pale and drawn, like that of one who has endured a great shock, but her manner was composed, and the finely molded hands which she rested upon the edge of the table was as steady as my own. Her sad, appealing eyes traveled from one to the other of us, with a curious, inquisitive expression. That questioning gaze transformed itself suddenly into abrupt speech. Have you found anything out yet? She asked. Was it my imagination that there was a undertone of fear rather than of hope in the question? We have taken every possible step, Miss Douglas, said the inspector. You may rest assured that nothing will be neglected. Spare no money, she said in a dead, even tone. It is my desire that every possible effort should be made. Perhaps you can tell us something which may throw some light upon the matter? I fear not, but all I know is at your service. We have heard from Mr. Cecil Barker that you did not actually see, that you were never in the room where the tragedy occurred? No. He turned me back upon the stairs. He begged me to return to my room. Quite so. You had heard the shot, and you had at once come down? I put on my dressing gown and then came down. How long was it after hearing the shot that you were stopped on the stairs by Mr. Barker? It, it may have been a couple of minutes. It is so hard reckon time at such a moment. He implored me to not to go on. He assured me that I could do nothing. Then Miss Allen, the housekeeper, led me upstairs again. It was all like some dreadful dream. You could give us any idea how long your husband had been downstairs before you heard the shot? No, I cannot say. He went from his dressing room, and I did not hear him go. He did the round of the house every night, for he was nervous of fire. It is the only thing that I have ever known him nervous of. That is just the point which I want to come to, Miss Douglas. You have known your husband only in England, have you not? Yes, we have been married 5 years. Have you heard him speak of anything which occurred in America? It might bring some danger upon him? Miss Douglas thought earnestly before she answered. Yes, he said at last, I have always felt that there was a danger hanging over him. He refused to discuss it with me, and it was not from what of confidence in me. There was a most complete love and confidence between us, but it was out of his desire to keep all alarm away from me. He thought I should brood over it if I knew all, and so he was silent. How did you know it then? Miss Douglas' face lit with a quick smile. Can a husband ever carry about a secret all his life, and a woman who loves him have no suspicion of it? I knew it by his refusal to talk about some episodes in his American life. I knew it by certain precautions he took. I knew it by certain words he let fall. I knew it by the way he looked at unexpected strangers. I was perfectly certain that he had some powerful enemies, that he believed they were on his track, and that he was always on his guard against them. I was so sure of it that for years I had been terrified if ever he came home later than was expected. Might I asked Holmes, what the words were which attracted your attention? The Valley of Fear, the lady answered. That was an expression he has used when I questioned him. I have been in the Valley of Fear. I am not out of it yet. Are we never to get out of the Valley of Fear? I have asked him when I have seen him more serious than usual. Sometimes I think that we never shall, he has answered. Surely you asked him what he meant by the Valley of Fear. I did, but his face would become very grave, and he would shake his head. It is bad enough that one of us should have been in its shadow, he said. Please God, it shall never fall upon you. It was some real valley in which he had lived, and in which something terrible had occurred to him. Of that I am certain, but I can tell you no more. And he never mentioned any names? Yes, he was delirious with fever once, when he had his hunting accident 3 years ago. Then I remember that there was a name that came continuously to his lips. He spoke it with anger and a sort of horror. McGiddy was the name. Bodymaster McGiddy. I asked him when he recovered who Bodymaster McGiddy was, and whose body he was master of. Never of mine, thank God, he answered with a laugh. That was all I could get from him. But there is a connection between Bodymaster McGinney and the Valley of Fear. There is one other point, said Inspector MacDonald. You met Mr. Douglas in a boarding house in London, did you not? And became engaged to him there? Was there any romance, anything secret or mysterious about the wedding? There was romance. There was always romance. There was nothing mysterious. He had no rival? No, I was quite free. You have heard, no doubt, that his wedding ring has been taken. Does that suggest anything to you? Suppose that some enemy of his old life had tracked him down and committed this crime? What possible reason could he have for taking his wedding ring? For an instant, I could have sworn that the faintest shadow of a smile flickered over the woman's lips. I really cannot tell, she answered. It is certainly a most, extraordinary thing. Well, we will not detain you any longer, and we are sorry to have put you to this trouble at such a time, said the inspector. There are some other points, no doubt, but we can refer to you as they arise. She rose, and I was again conscious of that quick questioning glance with which she had just surveyed us. What impression has my evidence made upon you? The question might as well have been spoken. Then, with a bow, she swept from the room. She's a beautiful woman, a very beautiful woman, said MacDonald thoughtfully, after the door had closed behind her. This man, Barker, has certainly been down here a good deal. He is a man who might be attractive to a woman. He admits that the dead man was jealous, and maybe he knew best himself because he had for jealousy. Then there's that wedding ring. You can't get past that. The man who tears a wedding ring off a dead man's. What do you say to it, Mr. Holmes? My friend had sat with his head upon his hands, sunk in the deepest thought. Now he rose and rang the bell. A mess, he said when the butler entered. Where is Mr. Cecil Barker now? I'll see, sir. He came back in a moment to say that Barker was in the garden. Can you remember, a mess, what Mr. Barker had on his feet last night when you joined him in the study? Yes, Mr. Holmes. He had a pair of bedroom slippers. I brought him his boots when he went for the police. Where are the slippers now? They are still under the chair in the hall. Very good, MS. It is, of course, important for us to know which tracks may be Mr. Barker's and which from outside. Yes, sir. I may say that I noticed that the slippers were stained with blood, so indeed were my own. That is natural enough, considering the conditions of the room. Very good, MS. We will ring if we want you. A few minutes later, we were in the study. Holmes had brought with him the carpet slippers from the hall. As MS had observed, the sole of both were dark with blood. Strange, murmured Holmes, as he stood in the light of the window and examined them minutely. Very strange indeed. Stooping with one of his quick, feline pounces, he placed the slipper upon the blood mark on the sill. It exactly corresponded. He smiled in silence at his colleagues. The inspector was transfigured with excitement. His native accent rattled like a stick upon railing. Man, he cried. There's not a doubt of it. Arthur had just marked the window himself. It's a good deal broader than any bookmark. I mind that you said it was a splay foot, and here's the explanation. But what's the game, Mr. Holmes? What's the game? Aye, what's the game? My friend repeated thoughtfully. White Mesa chuckled and rubbed his spider hands together in his professional satisfaction. I said it was a snorter, he cried, and a real snorter it is. All right, and that is the end of chapter 5. And Ruli Kai, welcome in. Thank you for the follow. Okay, so the next chapter is chapter 6, A Dawning Light. The three detectives have many matters of details into which to inquire, so I returned alone to our modest quarters at the village inn. But before doing so, I took a stroll in the curious old world garden which flanked the house. Rows of very ancient yew trees cut into strange designs guarded it round. Inside was a beautiful stretch of lawn with an old sundial in the middle. The whole effect so soothing and restful that it was welcome to my somewhat jangled nerves. In that deeply peaceful atmosphere, one could forget or remember only some fantastic nightmare, that darkened study with the sprawling, blood-stained figure on the floor. And yet, I strolled round it, and tried to steep my soul in its gentle balm. A strange incident occurred, which brought me back to the tragedy and left a sinister impression in my mind. I have said that a decoration of each tree circled the garden. At the end, farthest from the house, they thickened into a continuous hedge. On the other side of this hedge, concealed from the eyes of anyone approaching from the direction of the house, there was a stone seat. As I approached the spot, I was aware of voices, some remark in the deep tones of a man, answered by a little ripple of feminine laughter. An instant later, I had come round the end of the hedge, and my eyes lit upon Miss Douglas and the man Barker before they were aware of my presence. Her appearance gave me a shock. In the dining room, she had been demure and discreet. Not all pretense of grief had passed away from her. Her eyes shone with the joy of living, and her face still quivered with amazement at some remark of her companion. He sat forward, his hand clasped and his forearms on his knees, with an answering smile upon his bold, handsome face. In an instant, but it was just one instant too late, they resumed their solemn mask, as my figure came into view. A hurried word or two passed between them, and then Barker rose and came towards me. "Excuse me, sir," said he, "but am I addressing Dr. Watson?" I bowed with a coolness which showed, I dare say, very plainly the impression which had been produced upon my mind. thought that it was possible you, as your friendship with Mr. Sherlock Holmes is so well known. Would you mind coming over and speaking to Miss Douglas for an instant? I followed him with a dour face. Very clearly, I could see in my mind's eye the shattered figure on the floor. Here, within a few hours of the tragedy, where his wife and his nearest friend laughing together behind a bush in the garden, which had been his. I greeted the lady with reserve. I agreed with her grief in the dining room. Now I met her appealing gaze with an unresponsive eyes. I fear that you think me callous and hard-hearted, said she. I shrugged my shoulders. It is no business of mine, said I. Perhaps someday you will do me justice. If you only realized. There is no reason why Dr. Watson should realize, said Barker quickly, as he has himself said. It is no possible business of his. Exactly, said I, and so I will beg leave to resume my walk. One moment, Dr. Watson, cried the woman in a pleading voice. There is one question which you can answer with more authority than anyone else in the world, and it may make a very great difference to me. You know Mr. Holmes and his relations with the police better than anyone else can. Supposing that a matter were brought confidentially to his knowledge, it is absolutely necessary that he would pass it on to the detectives? Yes, that's it, said Barker eagerly. Is he on his own, or is he entirely in with them? I really don't know that I should be justified in discussing such a point. I beg, I implore that you will, Dr. Watson. I assure you that you will be helping me greatly, if you will guide us on that point. There was such a ring of sincerity in the woman's voice that for the instant I forgot all about her levity and was moved only to do her will. Mr. Holmes is an independent investigator, said I. He is his own master and would act as his own judgments directed. At the same time, he would naturally feel loyalty towards the officials who were working on the same case, and he would not conceal from them anything which would help them in bringing a criminal to justice. Beyond this, I cannot say nothing, and I would refer you to Mr. Holmes himself if you wanted fuller information. So saying, I raised my hat and went upon my way, leaving them still seated behind the concealing hedge. I looked back as I rounded the far end of it and saw that they were still talking very earnestly together. And as they were gazing after me, it was clear that it was our interview that was the subject of their debate. I wish none of their confidence, said Holmes when I reported to him what had occurred. He had spent the whole afternoon at the manor house in consultation with his two colleagues, and returned about 5 with a ravenous appetite for a high tea which I had ordered for him. No confidence, Watson, for they are mightily awkward if it comes to an arrest for conspiracy and murder. You think it will come to that? He was in his most cheerful and debonair humor. My dear Watson, when I have when I have exterminated that 4th egg, I shall be ready to put you in touch with the whole situation. I don't say that we have phantomed it, far from it. But when we have traced the missing dumbbell, dear me, Watson, it is possible that you have not penetrated the fact that the case hangs upon the missing dumbbell. Well, you need not be downcast, for between ourselves, I don't think that either Inspector Mac or the excellent local practitioner has grasped the overwhelming importance of this incident. One dumbbell, Watson. Consider an athlete with one dumbbell. Picture to yourself the unilateral development, the immediate danger of a spinal curvature. Shocking, Watson, shocking. Sat with his mouth full of toast and his eyes sparkling with mischief, watching my intellectual entanglement. The mere sight of his excellent appetite was an assurance of success, for I had very clear recollections of days and nights without a thought of food, when his baffled mind had chafed before some problem, while his thin, eager features become more attenuated with the asceticism of complete mental concentration. Finally, he lit his pipe, and sitting in the nook of the old village inn, he talked slowly and at random about his case, rather as one who thinks aloud than as one who makes inconsidered statements. A lie, Watson. A great big, thumping, obstructive, uncompromising lie. That's what meets us on the threshold. There is our starting point. The whole story told by Barker is a lie, but Barker's story is corroborated by Miss Douglas. Therefore, she is lying also. They are both lying, and in conspiracy. So now we have the clear problem. Why are they lying? And what is the truth, which they are trying so hard to conceal? Let us try, Watson, you and I, if we can't get behind the lie and reconstruct the truth. How do I know that they are lying? Because it is a clumsy fabrication which simply could not be true. Consider. According to the story given to us, the assassin had less than a minute after the murder had been committed to take that ring, which was under another ring from the dead man's finger, to replace the other ring, a thing which he would surely never have done, and to put that singular card beside his victim. I say that this was obviously impossible. You may argue, but I have too much respect for your judgment, Watson, to think that you will do so, that the ring may have been taken before the man was killed. The fact that the candle had been lit only a short time shows that there had been no lengthy interview. Was Douglas, from what we hear of his fearless character, a man who would be likely to give up his wedding ring at such short notice? Or could we conceive of his giving it up at all? No, Watson. The assassination was alone with the dead man for some time, with the lamp lit. Of that, I have no doubt at all. But the gunshot was apparently the cause of death. Therefore, the shot must have been fired sometime earlier than we are told. But there could be no mistake about such a matter as that. We are in the presence, therefore, of a deliberated conspiracy upon the part of the two people who heard the gunshot, of the man Barker and of the woman Douglas. When, on the top of this, I am able to show that the blood mark on the windowsill was deliberately placed there by Barker, in order to give a false clue to the police. He will admit that the case grows dark against him. Now, we have to ask ourselves at what hour the murder actually did occur. Up to 10:30, the servants were moving about the house, so it was certainly not before that time. At 11:15, they had all gone to their rooms, with the exception of MS. He was in the pantry. I have been trying some experiments after you left, as this afternoon, and I found that no noise which MacDonald can make in the study can penetrate to me in the pantry when the doors are all shut. It is otherwise, however, from the housekeeper's room. It is not so far down the corridor, and from it I could vaguely hear a voice when it was very loudly raised. The sound from a shotgun is to some extent muffled when the discharge is at very close range, as it undoubtedly was in this instance. It would not be very loud, and yet, in the silence of the night, it should have easily penetrated to Miss Allen's room. She is, as she has told us, somewhat deaf. But nonetheless, she mentioned in her evidence that she did hear something like a door slamming half an hour before the alarm was given. Half an hour before the alarm was given would be 11:15. I have no doubt that what she heard was the report of the gun, and that this was the real instant of the murder. If this is so, we have now to determine what Barker and Miss Douglas, presuming that they are not the actual murderers, could have been doing from 11:15, when the sound of the shot brought them down, into 11:15, when they rang the bell and summoned the servants. What were they doing, and why did they not instantly give the alarm? That is a question which faces us, and when it has been answered, we shall surely have gone some way to solve our problem. I am convinced myself, said I, that there is an understanding between those two people. She must be a heartless creature to sit laughing at some jest within a few hours of her husband's murder. All right. My father has food for me, so I will be right back.
君の笑顔は消えやしない守りたいのは今と未来と君たちのその輝き永遠なんて言葉はいらない積み重ねた日々が証だから一人じゃないんだ何度でも言うよ愛してるずっと変わらずに言葉をぶつけ合った日々も沈黙が重たくなる夜も同じ屋根の下で眠り朝はまた君の隣から始まるすれ違っても一つの空雲は流れてやがて晴れる見捨てたりはしない愛は消えない君たちと歩いてゆく成長する背中を見送り遠くなる声に戸惑ってもその瞳に映る未来そっと翼を広げてあげたい離れていても一
I came back with food, but I forgot my fork. I'm going back to the BRB. What's up? Oh, the BRB song? Let me get the song real quick for you. Okay, so this is the YouTube channel for all the songs. For the 3 songs, they're all from the same artist. Believe it's this one. Do a quick translation real quick because like it's all in Japanese. Yeah, it's this one. And this one is the BRB song. Yeah, no problem. Let me. Where was it? Okay, let me eat some of my eggs before it gets cold. So, my money is that the supposed best friend has something to do with it. Or he's working with someone else who did actual killing. There's no way someone else did it. It had to be him. And the wife isn't on it, so who knows? Because nothing about his story makes sense. It felt too like he was force feeding the police officers what was happening. Especially when he was pointing at where the bloodstain was on the windowsill. I said, how would you know that? If you came and saw your friend was dead and then ran out. That doesn't make any sense. Yes, we're reading the Sherlock Holmes one. Did I forget to put the link in chat? My bad, guys. My bad. Yeah, so it's the Valley of Fear one we're reading. Yeah, so we finished we finished the Hound of Baskerville. We read The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes already, and now we're reading The Valley of Fear, the novel. I think this one's pretty short compared to the Hound of the Baskerville. The Hound of the Baskerville was pretty long. But at least this one makes more sense than A Study of Scarlet. I'm not as confused as I was in that one. My only complaint about Sherlock Holmes stories is that they'll throw random words that I don't know, especially if it's like one of those old English words or French or German. So I have Google Translator up, and I just read those words through Google Translator because like I don't know how to pronounce shit. This new background music, I think it fits Sherlock Holmes very well. I think I'm gonna keep this for my background for my just chatting music. Hopefully I cut it up right so that it loops good. That's kind of what I was doing this morning because I was editing last week's reading and I realized the music wasn't even in the background. So I found this other song that I think it fits pretty better. So I just began cutting it up and trying to get it to loop seamlessly. It helps that the song is only like a minute long, but like trying to find and it kind of repeats a little bit. So I just had to find where the one end appeared in the beginning or like the end or yeah, something like that. And hello, Vector. How was your morning? Okie dokie. I'm the opposite. I've been up since last night. That is the curse of working night shifts. So like I woke up. I went to bed kind of late, so I ended up waking up at. I went to bed at like I woke up. I want to say 11 p.m. and then I've been up ever since. I don't go to bed till 12, so yeah, like noon. I'll be going to bed. Yeah. Okay, I'm dating. Vector, you miss when I started freaking out early in the stream because a spider appeared right in front of me. I was freaking out. Like it was going down on a single web. It started going down. I was talking, and then I saw it. It was like right where my camera, like on my eye level where the camera is, and I no me gusta. I swatted it away with like a piece of paper, and then it disappeared. I said like, "Oh no, it's still here!" And then I found it and I killed it. Yeah, I've mentioned I don't like bugs. I like them at a distance. Okay. I said this is chapter 6, right? Yeah, so we will be continuing chapter 6. Exactly. She does not shine as a wife even in her own account of what occurred. I am not a whole-souled admirer of womankind, as you are aware, Watson. Yes. I can't even send one of her spies at me. Ay, Dios mío. I was just not expecting it. Like I had a little spider like near my bed, but it's like on the floor. So I didn't even bother like killing it or anything. But like the moment it goes right in front of me, I said, nah, you mother freaking get away from me. Exactly. She does not shine as a wife, even in her own account of what occurred. I am not a whole-souled admirer of womankind, as you are aware, Watson, but my experience of life has taught me that there are few wives having any regard for their husbands. Who would let any man's spoken word stand between them and that husband's dead body? Exactly. One less Tukokoma to deal with. Should I ever marry Watson, I should hope to inspire my wife with some feeling which would prevent her from being from being walked off by a housekeeper when my horse was lying within a few yards of her. It was badly staged, managed. Or even the rawest investigator must be shocked by the absence of the usual feminine. What? What is this word? Yolulation. It was badly stage managed, for even the rawest investigator must be struck by the absence of the usual feminine ululation. If there had been nothing else, this incident alone would have suggested a prearranged conspiracy to my mind. You think then, definitely, that Barker and Miss Douglas are guilty of the murder? There isn't a appalling directness about your question, Watson, said Holmes, shaking his pipe at me. They come at me like bullets. If you put it that Miss Douglas and Barker knew the truth about the murderer and are conspiring to conceal it, then I can give you a whole souled answer. I am sure they do. But you're more deeply positioned. It's not so clear. Let's for a moment consider the difficulties which stand in the way. We will suppose that this couple are united by the bonds of a guilty love, and that they have determined to get rid of the man who stands between them. It is a large supposition, for discreet inquiry among servants and others has failed to corroborate in any way. On the contrary, there is a good deal of evidence that the Douglases were very attached to each other. That, I am sure, cannot be true, said I, thinking of the beautiful smile, the beautiful smiling face in the garden. Well, at least they gave that impression. However, we will suppose that they are an extraordinarily astute couple who deceived everyone upon this point and conspired to murder the husband. He happens to be a man over whose head some danger hangs. We have only their word for that. Holmes looked thoughtful. I see, Watson. You are sketching out a theory by which everything they say from the beginning is false. According to your idea, there was never any hidden menace, or secret society, or valley of fear, or boss, Max somebody, or anything else. Well, that is a good sweeping generalization. Let us see what that brings us to. They invent this theory to account for the crime. They then play up to the idea by leaving his bicycle in the park as proof of the existence of some outsider. The stain on the windowsill conveys the same idea. So, does the card on the body, which might have been prepared in the house? That all fits into your hypothesis, Watson. But now we come on the nasty, angular, uncompromising bits, which won't slip into their places. Why a cut-off shotgun, of all weapons? And an American one at that. How could they be so sure that the sound of it would not bring someone onto them? It's a mere chance, as it is that Miss Allen did not start out to inquire for the slamming door. Why did your guilty couple do all of this, Watson? I confess, I can't explain it. Then again, if a woman and her lover conspire to murder a husband, are they going to advertise their guilt by ostentatiously? Big words, guys, big words. Ostentatiously. I never heard of my word in my life. To advertising their guilt by ostentatiously removing his wedding ring after his death. Does that strike you as very probable, Watson? No, it does not. And once again, if the thought of leaving a bicycle concealed outside had occurred to you, would it really have seemed worth doing when the dullest detective would naturally say this is an obvious blind, as the bicycle is the first thing which the fugitive needed in order to make his escape? I can see with no explanation. And yet there should be no combination of events for which the wit of man cannot conceive an explanation. Simply as a mental exercise, without any assertion that it is true, let me indicate a possible line of thought. It is, I admit, mere imagination, but how often is imagination the mother of truth? We will suppose that there was a guilty secret, a really shameful secret in the life of this man, Douglas. This leads to his murder by someone who is, we will suppose, an avenger, someone from outside. Hello, Dazos and Glenn. How are you guys? Beatbreaker? No, I have not seen it. I didn't realize it was out yet. I know the game's out. Oh yeah, I was gonna say she's like, oh yeah, I have never heard of that word before. Oh, okay. I have them marked on my calendar to watch when I have a chance. Where was I? um, okay. This Avenger, for some reason, which I confess I am still at a loss to explain, took the damn man's wedding ring. The vendetta might uh, conceivably date back to the man's first marriage, and the ring be taken for some such reason. Before this Avenger got away, Barker and the wife had reached the room. The assassin convinced them that any attempt to arrest him would lead to the publication of some hideous scandal. They were converted to this idea and prefer to let him go. For this purpose, they probably lowered the bridge, which could be done quite noiselessly, and then raised it again. He made his escape, and for some reason thought that he could do so more safely on foot than on the bicycle. He therefore left his machine where it would not be discovered until he had got safely away. So far, we are within the bounds of possibility, are we not? Well, it is possible, no doubt, said I with some reserve. We have to remember, Watson, that whatever occurred is certainly something very extraordinary. Well, now to continue our supposititious case, the couple, not necessarily a guilty couple, realize after the murderer is gone that they have placed themselves in a position in which it may be difficult for them to prove that they did not themselves either do the deed or connive at it. They rapidly and rather clumsily met the situation. The mark was put by Barker's blood-stained slipper upon the windowsill to suggest how the fugitive got away. They obviously were the two who must have heard the sound of the gun, so they gave the alarm exactly as they would have done, but a good half hour after the event. And how do you propose to prove all this? Well, if there were an outsider, he may be traced and taken. That would be the most effective of all proofs. But if not, well, the resources of science are far from being exhausted. I think that an evening alone in that study will help me much. An evening alone? I propose to do up there presently. I have arranged it with the estimable MS, who is by no means wholehearted about Barker. I shall sit in that room and see if its atmosphere brings me inspiration. I'm a believer in the genius, Lucy. You smile, Fred Watson. Well, we shall see. By the way, you have that big umbrella of yours, have you not? It is here. Well, I'll borrow that if I may. Certainly, but what a wretched weapon if there is danger. Nothing serious, my dear Watson, or I should certainly ask for your assistance. But I'll take the umbrella. At present, I am only awaiting the return of our colleagues from Tunbridge Wells, where they are at present engaged in trying for a likely owner to the bicycle. Hello, I'm bad with money. How are you? It was nightfall before Inspector MacDonald and White Mason came back from their expedition, and they arrived exultant, reporting a great advance in our investigation. Man, I'll admit that I had my doubts if there was ever an outsider, said MacDonald. But that's all past now. We've had the bicycle identified, and we have a description of our man, so that's a long step on our journey. It seems to me like the beginning of the end, said Holmes. I'm sure I congratulate you both with all my heart. Well, I started from the fact that Mr. Douglas had seemed disturbed since the day before, when he had been on Tunbridge Wells. It was at Tunbridge Wells then that he had become conscious of some danger. It was clear, therefore, that if a man had come over with a bicycle, it was from Tunbridge Wells that he might be expected to have come. We took the bicycle over with us and showed it at the hotels. It was identified at once by the manager of the Eagle Commercial as belonging to a man named Hargrave, who had taken a room there 2 days before. This bicycle and a small valise were his whole belongings. He had registered his name as coming from London, but had given no address. The valise was London made, and the contents were British, but the man himself was undoubtedly an American. Well, well, said Holmes gleefully, you have indeed done some solid work, while I have been, sitting spinning theories with my friend. It's a lesson in being practical, Mr. Mac. Ah, it's just that, Mr. Holmes, said the inspector with satisfaction. But this may all fit in with your theories, I remarked. That may or may not be, but let us hear the end, Mr. Mac. Was there nothing to identify this man? So little that was evident that he had carefully guarded himself against identification. There were no papers or letters, and no marking upon the clothes. A cycle map of the county lay on his bedroom table. He had left the hotel after breakfast yesterday morning on his bicycle, and no more was heard of him until our inquiries. That's what puzzles me, Mr. Holmes, said White Mason. If the fellow did not want the hue and cry raised over him, one would imagine that he would have returned and remained at the hotel as an inoffensive tourist. As it is, he must know that. He will be reported to the police by the hotel manager, and that his disappearance will be connected with the murder. So one would imagine. Still, he has been justified of his wisdom up to date, at any rate, then he has not been taken. But his description, what of that? MacDonald referred to his notebook. Here we have it so far as they could give it. They don't seem to have taken any very particular stock of him, but still the porter, the clerk, and the chambermaid are all agreed that this about covers the points. He was a man about 5'9" in height, 50 or so years of age, his hair slightly grizzled, a grayish mustache, a curved nose, and a face which all of them described as fierce and forbidding. Well, bar the expression that might almost be a description of Douglas himself, said Holmes. He is just over 50, with grizzled hair and mustache, and about the same height. Did you get anything else? He was dressed in a heavy gray suit with a reefer jacket, and he wore a short yellow overcoat and a soft cap. What about the shotgun? It is less than 2 feet long. It could very well have fitted into his valise. He could have carried it inside his overcoat without difficulty. And how do you consider that all this bears upon the general case? Well, Mr. Holmes, said MacDonald, when we have got our man, and you may be sure that I had the description on the wires within 5 minutes of hearing it, we shall be better able to judge. But even as it stands, we have surely gone a long way. We know that an American calling himself Hargrave came to Tunbridge Wells 2 days ago with bicycle and valise. And the latter was a sawed-off shotgun, so he came with the deliberate purpose of crime. Yesterday morning, he set off for his place on his bicycle, with his gun concealed in his overcoat. No one saw him arrive, so far as we can learn, but he need not pass through the village to reach the park gates. And there are many cyclists upon the road. Presumably, he at once concealed his cycle among the laurels where it was found, and possibly lurked there himself with his eye on the house, waiting for McDonald's to come out. The shotgun is a strange weapon to use inside a house, but he had intended to use it outside, and there it has very obvious advantages, as it would be impossible to miss with it. And the sound of shots is so common in an English sporting neighborhood that no particular notice would be taken. That is all very clear, said Holmes. Well, Mr. Douglas did not appear. What was he to do next? He left his bicycle and approached the house in the twilight. He found the bridge down and no one about. He took his chance, intending no doubt to make some excuse if he met anyone. He met no one. He slipped into the first room that he saw, concealed himself behind the curtain. Hence, he could see the drawbridge go up, and he knew that his only escape was through the moat. He waited until 11:15, when Mr. Douglas, upon his usual nightly round, came into the room. He shot him and escaped, as arranged. He was aware that the bicycle would be described by the hotel people and be a clue against him, so he left it there and made his way by some other means to London or to some safe hiding place, which he had already arranged. How was that, Mr. Holmes? Well, Mr. Mac, it is very good and very clear so far as it goes. That is your end of the story. My end is that the crime was committed half an hour earlier than reported. That Miss Douglas and Barker are both in conspiracy to conceal something. That they aided the murderer's escape, or at least that they reached the room before he escaped. And that they fabricated evidence of his escape through the window, whereas in all probability, they had themselves let him go by lowering the bridge. That's my reading of the first half. The two detectives shook their heads. Well, Mr. Holmes, this is true. We only tumbled out of one mystery into another, said the London inspector. And in some ways a worse one, added White Mason. The lady has never been in America in all her life. What possible connection could she have with an American assassin, which would cause her to shelter him? I freely admit the difficulties, said Holmes. I propose to make a little investigation of my own tonight. And it is just possible that it may contribute something to the common cause. Can we help you, Mr. Holmes? No. Darkness and Dr. Watson's umbrella. My wants are simple. An MS. The faithful MS. No doubt he will sketch a point for me. All my lines of thought lead me back invariably to one basic question. Why should an athletic man develop his frame upon so unnatural an instrument as a common dumbbell? It was late that night when Holmes returned from his solitary excursion. He slept in the double-bedded room, which was the best that the little country inn could do for us. I was already asleep when I was partly awakened by his entrance. Well, Holmes, I murmured, have you found anything out? He stood beside me in silence, his candle in his hand. Then the tall, lean figure inclined towards me. I say, Watson, he whispered, would you be afraid to sleep in the same room with a lunatic? A man with softening of the brain, an idiot whose mind has lost its grip. Not in the least, I answered in astonishment. Ah, that's lucky, he said, and not another word will be uttered that night. That is so strange. Why would he say that? All right, so this is the last chapter for part 1. So this is chapter 7. The solution. The next morning after breakfast, we found Inspector MacDonald and White Mason seated in close consultation in a small parlor of the local police circuit. On the table in front of them were piled a number of letters and telegrams, which they were carefully sorting and docketing. 3 had been placed on one side. Still on the track of the elusive bicyclist? Holmes asked cheerfully. What is the latest news of the ruffian? McDonald pointed ruefully to his heap of correspondence. He is at present reported from Lancaster, Northingham, Southampton, Derby, Eastham, Richmond, and 14 other places, and 3 of them, Eastham, Chester, and Liverpool, there is a clear case against him, and he has actually been arrested. The country seems to be full of the fugitives with yellow coats. Dear me, said Holmes sympathetically. Now, Mr. Mac, and you, Mr. White Mason, I wish to give you a very earnest piece of advice. When I went into this case with you, I bargained, as you will no doubt remember, that I would not present you with half-proven theories, but that I would retain and work out my own ideas until I had satisfied myself that they were correct. At this the reason I am not at the present moment telling you all that is in my mind. On the other hand, I said that I would play the game fairly by you, and I do not think it is fair to allow you for one unnecessary moment to waste your energies upon a profitless task. Therefore, I am here to advise you this morning, and my advice to you is summed up in 3 words. Abandon the case. MacDonald and White Mesa stared in at amazement at their celebrated colleague. You consider it hopeless? Cried the inspector. I consider your case to be hopeless. I do not consider that it is hopeless to arrive at the truth. But the cyclist, he is not an invention. We have his description, his valise, his bicycle. The fellow must be somewhere. Why should we not get him? Yes, no doubt. He is somewhere, and no doubt we shall get him, but I would not have you waste your energies and East Ham or Liverpool. I am sure that we can find some shorter cut to a result. You are holding something back. It's hardly fair of you, Mr. Holmes. The inspector was annoyed. You know my methods of work, Mr. Mac, but I will hold it back for the shortest time possible. I only wish to verify my details in one way, which can very readily be done, and then I make my bow and return to London, leaving my results entirely at your service. I owe you too much to act otherwise. For in all my experience, I cannot recall any more singular and interesting study. This is clean beyond me, Mr. Holmes. We saw you when we returned from Tunbridge Wells last night, and you were in general agreement with our results. What has happened since then to give you a completely new idea of the case? Well, since you asked me, I spent, as I told you, what I would, some hours last night at the manor house. What happened? I can only give you a very general answer to that for the moment. By the way, I have been reading a short but clear and interesting account of the old building, purchasable at the modest sum of 1 penny from the local tobacconist. Here, Holmes drew a small tracet embellished with a rude engraving of the ancient manor house from his waistcoat pocket. It immensely adds to the zest of an investigation, my dear Mr. Mac, when one is conscious sympathy with the historic atmosphere of one's surroundings. Don't look so impatient, for I assure you that even so bold an account as this rises some sort of picture of the past in one's mind. Let me to give you a sample. Erected in the 5th year of the reign of James I, and standing upon the site of a much older building, the manor house of Burlstone presents one of the finest surviving examples of the moated Jacobean residence. You are making fools of us, Mr. Holmes. Todd, Mr. Mac. The first sign of temper I have detected in you. I won't read it verbatim, since you feel so strongly upon the subject. But when I tell you that there is some account of taking of the place by preliminary Gronlio is 1644, with the concealment of Charles for 7 days in the course of the Civil War, and finally of a visit there by the second George, you will admit that there are various associations of interest connected with this ancient house. I don't doubt it, Mr. Holmes, but that is no business of ours. Is it not? Is it not? Breadth of view, my dear Mr. Mac, is one of the essentials of our profession. The interplay of ideas and the obscure uses of knowledge are often of extraordinary interest. You will excuse these remarks from one who, though a mere connoisseur of crime, is still rather older and perhaps more experienced than yourself. I'm the first to admit that, said the detective heartily. You get to your point, I admit, but you have such a this round the corner way of doing it. Oh well, I'll drop past history and get down to the present day facts. I called last night, as I have already said, at the manor house. I did not see either Barker or Miss Douglas. I saw no necessity to disturb them, but I was pleased to hear that the lady was not visibly pinning and that she had partaken of an excellent dinner. My visit was specially made to the good Mr. MS, with whom I exchanged some amabilities, which culminated in his allowing me, without reference to anyone else, to sit alone for a time in the study. What? With that? I ejaculated. No. Everything is in order. You gave permission for that, Mr. Mac, as I am informed. The room was in its normal state, and in it I passed an instructive quarter of an hour. What were you doing? Well, not to make a mystery of a so simple matter. I was looking for the missing dumbbell. It has always bulked rather large in my estimate of the case. I ended by finding it. Where? There we come to the edge of the unexplored. Let me go a little further, a very little further, and I will promise that you shall share everything that I know. Well, we're bound to take you on your own terms, said the inspector. But when it comes to telling us to abandon the case, why in the name of goodness should we abandon the case? For the simple reason, my dear Mr. Mac, that you are not got the first idea what it is that you are investigating. We are investigating the murder of Mr. John Douglas, our Burley Manor. Yes, so you are. But don't trouble to trace the mysterious gentleman upon the bicycle. I assure you that it won't help you. Then what do you suggest that we do? I will tell you exactly what to do, if you will do it. Well, I'm bound to say I always found you had reason behind all your queer ways. I'll do what you advise. And you, Mr. White Mason? The country detective looked helplessly from one to the other. Holmes and his methods were new to him. Well, if it is good enough for the inspector, it is good enough for me, he said at last. Capital, said Holmes. Well then, I should recommend a nice, cheery country walk for both of you. They tell me that the views from Burlstone Ridge over the Weald are very remarkable. No doubt lunch could be bought at some suitable hostelry, though my ignorance of the country prevents me from recommending one. In the evening, tired but happy. And this is getting past a joke, cried MacDonald, rising angrily from his chair. Well, spend the day as you like, said Holmes, patting him cheerfully upon the shoulder. Do what you like and go where you will, but meet me here before dusk without fail. Without fail, Mr. Mac. That sounds more like sanity. All of it was excellent advice, but I don't insist so long as you are here when I need you. But now, before we part, I wanted you to write a note to Mr. Barker. Well, I'll dictate it, if you like. Ready? It has struck me, dear sir, it has struck me that it is our duty to drain the moat in hopes that we may find some. It's impossible, said the inspector. I've made inquiry. Ta, my dear sir. Please do what I ask you. Oh, go on. In the hopes that we might find something which may bear upon our investigation. I have made arrangements, and the workmen will be at work early tomorrow morning, diverting the stream. Impossible. And diverting the streams. So I thought it'd be best to explain matters beforehand. Now sign that, and send it by hand about 4 o'clock. At that hour we shall meet again in this room. Until then, we may each do what we like, for I can assure you that this inquiry has come to a definite pause. Evening was drawing in when we reassembled. Holmes was very serious in this matter, himself curious, and the detectives obviously critical and annoyed. Well, gentlemen, said my friend gravely, I'm asking you now to put everything to the test with me, and you will judge for yourselves rather the observations I have made justify the conclusions to which I have come. It is a chilly evening, and I do not know how long our expedition may last. So I beg you that you will wear your warmest coats. It is of the first importance that we should be in our places before it grows dark. So, with your permission, we shall get started at once. We passed along the outer borders of the manor house park until we came to a place where there was a gap in the rails which fenced it. So through this we slipped, and then, in gathering gloom, we followed Holmes until we had reached a shrubbery which lies nearly opposite to the main door and the drawbridge. The latter had not been raised. Holmes crouched down behind the screen of laurels, and we only followed his example. What are we to do now? Asked MacDonald with some gruffness. Possess our souls in patience and make as little noise as possible, Holmes answered. What are we here for at all? I really think that you might treat us with more frankness. Holmes laughed. Also, this is that I am the gentlest in real life, said he. Some touch of the artist wells up within me and calls insistently for a well-staged performance. Surely our profession, Mr. Mac, would be a drab and sordid one if we did not sometimes set the scene so as to glorify our results. The blunt accusations, the brutal trap upon the shoulder, what can one make of such denouement? But the quick inference, the subtle trap, the clever forecast of coming events, the triumphant vindication of bold theories, are these not the pride and justification of our life's work? At the present moment, we thrill with the glamour of the situation and the anticipation of the hunt. Where would be that thrill if I had been as definite as a timetable? Only ask a little patience, Mr. Mac, and all will be clear to you. Oh, I hope the pride and justification and the rest of it will come back. We all get our depths of cold, said the London detective, with comment resignations. We all had good reason to join in the aspiration, for our vigil was a long and bitter one. Slowly the shadows darkened over the long, somber face of the old house. A cold damp reek from the moat chilled us to the bones, set our teeth chattering. There was a single lamp over the gateway, and a steady globe of light in the fatal study. Everything else was dark and still. How long is this to last? Asked the inspector finally. And what is it that we're watching for? I have no more notion than you how long it is to last, Holmes answered with some asperity. If criminals would always schedule their movements like railway trains, it would certainly be more convenient for all of us. As to what well, that's what we are watching for. As he spoke, the bright yellow light in the study was obscured by somebody passing to and fro before it. The loo rails among which we lay were immediately opposite the window, and not more than 100 feet from it. Presently, it was thrown open with winding hinges, and we could dimly see the dark outline of a man's head and shoulders looking out into the gloom. For some minutes, he peeked forth in furtive, stealthy fashion, as one who wishes to be assured that he is unobserved. Then he leaned forward, and in the instant silence, we were aware of the soft lapping of agitated water. He seemed to be stirring up the moat with something which he held in his hand. Then suddenly, he holds something in a fisherman's lands a fish, some large brown object which obscured the light as it was dragged through the open casement. Now, cried Holmes, now! We were all upon our feet, staggering after him with our stiffening limbs, while he ran swiftly across the bridge and ran violently at the bell. There was the rasping of bolts from the other side, and the amazed men stood in the entrance. Holmes brushed him aside without a word, and followed by all of us, rushed into the room which had been occupied by the man whom he had been watching. The old lamp on the table represented the glow which we had seen from outside. It was now in the hand of Cecilia Barker, who held it towards us as we entered. Its light shone upon his strong, resolute, a clean-shaven face, and his menacing eyes. "What the devil is the meaning of all this?" he cried. "What are you after, anyhow?" Holmes took a swift glance around, and then pounced upon a sudden bundle tied together with a cord, which lay where it had been thrusted under the writing table. "This is what we're after, Mr. Barker. This bundle weighed with a dumbbell which you have just raised from the bottom of the moat." Barker stared at Holmes with amazement in his face. "How in thunder came you to know anything about it?" he asked. "Simple, that put it there." "You put it there, you?" "Perhaps I should have said replaced it there," said Holmes. "You will remember, Inspector MacDonald, that I was somewhat struck by the absence of a dumbbell. I drew your attention to it, but with the pressure of the other events, you had hardly the time to give it the consideration which would have enabled you to draw deductions from it. When water is near, a weight is missing. It is not a very far-fetched supposition that something has been sunk in the water. The idea was at least worth testing. So with the help of a mess, who admitted me to the room, and the crook of Dr. Watson's umbrella, I was able last night to fish up and inspect his bundle. It was of the first importance, however, that we should be able to prove who placed it there. This we accomplished by the very obvious device of announcing that the moat would be tried tomorrow, which had, of course, the effect that whoever had hidden the bundle would most certainly withdraw it the moment the darkness enabled him to do so. We have no less than 4 witnesses as to who it was who took advantage of the opportunity, and so, Mr. Barker, I think the word lies now with you." "Hi, villain." Sherlock Holmes put the quivering bundle upon the table beside the lamp, and undid the cord which bound it. From within, he extracted a dumbbell, which he tossed down to its fellow in the corner. Now he drew forth a pair of boots. American, as you perceived, he remarked, pointing to the toes. Then he laid upon the table a long, deadly, teethed knife. Finally, he had revealed a bundle of clothing, comprising a complete set of underclothes, socks, a gray tweeded suit, and a short yellow overcoat. The clothes are commonplace, remarked Holmes. They've only the overcoat, which is full of suggestive touches. Held in tenderly towards the light. Here, as you perceive, is the inner pocket prolonged into the lining in such fashion as to give ample space for the truncated fowling piece. The tailor's tab is on the neck. Neil Outfitter, Vermissa, USA. I have spent an instructive afternoon in the Vector Library and have enlarged my knowledge by adding the fact that Vermissa is a flourishing little town at the head of one of the best known iron valleys in the United States. I have some recollection, Mr. Barker, that you associated the coal districts with Mr. Douglas's first wife, and it would surely not be too far-fetched an inference that the VV upon the card by the dead body might stand for Vermissa Valley, or that this very valley, which sends forth emissaries of murder, may be that valley of fear of which we have heard. So much is fairly clear. And now, Mr. Barker, I seem to be standing rather in the way of your explanation. It was a sight to see Cecile Barker's expressive face during this exposition of the great detective. Anger, amazement, consternation, and indecision swept over it in turn. Finally, he took a refuge in a somewhat acrid irony. You know such a lot, Mr. Holmes. Perhaps you had better tell us some more, he sneered. I have no doubt that I could tell you a great deal more, Mr. Barker, but it would come with a better grace from you. Oh, you think so, do you? Well, all I can say is that if there is any secret here, it is not my secret. I am not the man to give it away. Well, if you take that line, Mr. Barker, said the inspector quietly, we must just keep you in sight until we have the warrant and can hold you. You can do what you damn please about that, said Barker defiantly. The proceedings seemed to have come to a definite end so far as he was concerned, for one had only to look at that granite face to realize that no paying fortitudor would ever force him to plead against his will. The deadlock was broken, however, by a woman's voice. Miss Douglas has been standing listening at the half-open door, and now she entered the room. You have done enough for now, Cecile, said she. Whatever comes of it in the future, you have done enough. Enough, and more than enough, remarked Sherlock Holmes gravely. I have every sympathy with you, madam. I should strongly urge you to have some confidence in the common sense of your jurisdiction, and to take the police voluntarily into your complete confidence. It may be that I am myself at fault for not following up the hint which you conveyed to me through my friend Dr. Watson. But at that time, I had every reason to believe that you were directly concerned in the crime. Now I am assured that this is not so. At the same time, there is such that is unexplained, and I should strongly recommend that you ask Mr. Douglas to tell us his own story. Miss Douglas gave a cry of astonishment at Holmes' words. The detectives and I must have echoed it when we were aware of a man who seemed to have emerged from the wall, who advanced now from the gloom of the corner in which he had appeared. Miss Douglas turned, and in an instant her arms were around him. Barker had seized his outstretched hand. "It's best this way, Jack," his wife repeated. "I am sure that it is best." "Indeed, yes, Mr. Douglas," said Sherlock Holmes. "I am sure that you will find it best." The man stood blinking at us with the dazed look of one who comes from the dark into the light. It was a remarkable face, a bold gray eyes, and a strong, short-clipped grizzled mustache, a square, projecting chin, and a humorous mouth. He took a good look at all of us, and then, to my amazement, he advanced to me and handed me a bundle of paper. "I've heard of you," said he in a voice which was not quite English and not quite American, but was altogether mellow and pleasing. "You are the historian of this bunch." "Well, Dr. Watson, you've never had such a story as that pass through your hands before, and I'll lay my last dollar on that. Tell it your own way. But there are the facts. You can't miss the public so long as you have these. I've been cooped up 2 days, and I've spent the daylight hours, as much daylight as I could get, in that rat trap, and putting the thing into words. You're welcome to them, you and your public. There's the story of the Valley of Fear." "That's the past, Mr. Douglas," said Sherlock Holmes quietly. "What we desire now is to hear your story of the present." "You'll have it, sir," said Douglas. "May I smoke as I talk?" "Well, thank you, Mr. Holmes. You're a smoker yourself, if I remember right. And you'll guess what it is to be sitting for 2 days with tobacco in your pocket and afraid that the smell will give you away." He leaned against the mantelpiece and sucked at the cigar which Holmes had handed him. "I heard of you, Mr. Holmes. I never guessed that I should meet you. But before you are through with that," he nodded at my papers, "you will say I've brought you something fresh." Inspector MacDonald has been staring at the newcomer with the greatest amazement. "Well, this fairly beats me," he cried at last. "If you are Mr. John Douglas of Burlstone Manor, and whose death have we been investigating for these 2 days? And where in the world have you sprung from now? You seem to me to come out of the floor like a jack-in-a-box." "Ah, Mr. Mac," said Holmes, shaking a reproving forefinger. "You would not read that excellent local compilation which described the concealment of King Charles. People did not hide in those days without excellent hiding places, and the hiding place that has once been used may be again. I had persuaded myself that we should find Mr. Douglas under the roof." "And how long have you been playing this trick upon us, Mr. Holmes?" said the inspector angrily. "How long have you allowed us to waste ourselves upon a search that you knew to be an absurd one?" "Not 1 instant, my dear Mr. Mac. Only last night did I form my views of the case, as they could not be put to proof until this evening. I invited you and your colleague to take a holiday for the day. Pray, what more could I do? When I found the suit of clothes in the moat, it at once became apparent to me that the body we had found could not have been the body of Mr. John Douglas at all, but must be that of the bicyclist from Turnbridge Wells. No other conclusion was possible. Therefore, I had to determine where Mr. John Douglas himself could be. And the balance of probability was that with the connivance of his wife and his friend, he was concealed in a house, which had such fantasies for a fugitive and awaiting quieter times when he could make his final escape. Well, you figured it out about right, said Douglas approvingly. I thought I dodged your British law, for I was not sure how I stood under it. And also, I saw my chance to throw these hounds once for all off my track. Mind you, from first to last, I have done nothing to be ashamed of, and nothing that I would not do again. But you'll judge that for yourselves when I tell you my story. Never mind warning me, Inspector. I'm ready to stand pat upon the truth. I'm not going to begin at the beginning. That's all there. He indicated my bundle of paper, and a mighty queer yarn, you'll find it. It all comes down to this, that there are some men that have good cause to hate me, and would give their last dollar to know that they had got me. So long as I am alive, and they are alive, there is no safety in this world for me. They hunted me from Chicago to California. Then they chased me out of America. But when I married and settled down in this quiet spot, I thought my last years were going to be peaceable. I never explained to my wife how things were. Why should I pull her into it? She would never have a quiet moment again, but would always be imagining trouble. I fancy she knew something, for I may have dropped a word here or a word there. But until yesterday, after you gentlemen had seen her, she never knew the rights of the matter. She told you all she knew, and so did Barker here. For on the night when this thing happened, there was mighty little time for explanations. She knows everything now, and I would have been a wiser man if I had told her sooner. But it was a hard question, dear. He took her hand for an instant in his own, and I acted for the best. Well, gentlemen, the day before these happenings, I was over in Tunbridge Wells, and I got a glimpse of a man in the street. It was only a glimpse, but I have a quick eye for these things, and I never doubted who it was. It was the worst enemy I had among them all. One who has been after me like a hungry wolf after a um, caribou all these years. I knew there was trouble coming, and I came home and made ready for it. I guess I'd fight through it all right on my own. My luck was proverbied in the States about 76. I never doubted that it would be with me still. I was on my guard all that next day and never went out into the park. It's as well, or he'd have had the drop on me with that buckshot gun of his before ever I could draw on him. After the bridge was up, my mind was always more restful when that bridge was up in the evening. I put that thing clear out of my mind. I never dreamed of his getting into the house and waiting for me. But when I made my round in my dressing gown, as was my habit, I had no sooner entered the study than I sensed the danger. I guess when a man has had danger in his life, and I've had more than most in my time, there is a kind of sixth sense that waves the red flag. I saw the signal clear enough, and yet I couldn't tell you why. Next instant, I spotted a blue under the window curtain, and then I saw wine plain enough. I adjusted the one candle that was in my hand. but there was a good light from the hall lamp through the open door. I put down the candle and jumped for a hammer that I left on the mantel. At the same moment, he sprung at me. I saw the glint of a knife, and I lashed at him with the hammer. I got him somewhere, for the knife tickled down on the floor. He dodged from the table as quick as an eel, and a moment later, he got his gun from under his coat. I heard him cock it, but I had got hold of it before he could fire. I had it by the barrel, and we wrestled for it all the ends up for a minute or more. There was death to the man that lost his grip. He never lost his grip, but he got it butt downward for a moment too long. Maybe it was I that pulled the trigger. Maybe we jostled it off between us. Anyhow, we got both barrels into the face, and there I was, staring down all that was left of Ted Baldwin. I recognized him in the township, and again, when he sprung for me, but his own mother wouldn't recognize him as I saw him then. I'm used to rough work, but I'm really turned sick at the sight of him. I was hanging on the side of the table when Barker came hurrying down. I heard my wife coming, and I ran to the door and stopped her. It was no sight for a woman. I promised I'd come to her soon. I said a word or two to Barker. He took it all in a glance, and we waited for the rest to come along. But there was no sign of them. Then we understood that they could hear nothing, and that all that had happened was known only to ourselves. It was at that instant that the idea came to me. I was fairly dazzled by the brilliance of it. The man's sleeve had slipped up, and there was the branded mark of the lounge upon his forearm. See here. The man whom we had known as Douglas turned up his own coat and cuff to show a brown triangle within a circle exactly like that which we had seen upon the dead man. It was the sight of that which started me on it. I seemed to see it all clear at a glance. There were his height and hair and figure, about the same as my own. No one could swear to his face, poor devil. I brought down his suit of clothes, and in a quarter of an hour, Barker and I had put my dressing gown on him, and he lay as you found him. We tied all his things into a bundle, and I weighed them with the only weight I could find and put them through the window. The card he had meant to lay upon my body was laying beside his own. My rings we put on his finger, but when it came to the wedding ring, he held out his muscular hand. You can see for yourself that I had struck the limit. I have not moved it since the day I was married. And it would have taken a file to get it off. I don't know, anyhow, that I should have cared to part with it, but if I had wanted to, I couldn't. So we just had to leave that detail to take care of itself. On the other hand, I brought a bit of plaster down and put it where I was wearing one myself at this instance. You slipped up there, Mr. Holmes, clever as you are. Or if you had a chance to take off that plaster, you would have found no cut underneath it. Well, that was the situation. If I could lie low for a while and then get away where I could be joined by my widow, we should have a chance at last of living in peace for the rest of our lives. These devils will give me no rest so long as I was above ground. But if they saw in the papers that Baldwin had got his man, there would be an end of all my troubles. I hadn't much time to make it all clear to Barker and to my wife. but they understood enough to be able to help me. I knew all about this hiding place, so did a mess. But it never entered his head to connect it with the matter. I retired into it, and it was up to Barker to do the rest. I guess you could fill in for yourselves what he did. He opened the window and made the mark on the sill to give an idea of how the murder escaped. It was a tall order that, but as the bridge was up, there was no other way. Then, when everything was fixed, he rang the bell for all he was worth. What happened afterwards, you know. And so, gentlemen, you can do what you please, but I've told you the truth and the whole truth, so help me God. What I ask you now is, how do I stand by the English law? There was a silence which was broken by Sherlock Holmes. The English law isn't the main HS law. You will get no worse than your deserts from that, Mr. Douglas. But I would ask you, how did this man know that you lived here? Or how to get into your house? Or where to hide to get you? I know nothing of this. Holmes' face was very white and grave. The story is not over yet, I fear, said he. You may find worse dangers than the English law, or even than your enemies from America. I see trouble before you, Mr. Douglas. You'll take my advice and still be on your guard. And now, my long-suffering readers, I will ask you to come away with me for a time, far from the Sussex Manor house, our Burlstone, and far also from the year of grace in which we made our eventful journey, which ended with the strange story of the man who had been known as John Douglas. I wish you to journey back some 20 years in time, and westward some thousand of miles in space, that I may lay before you a singular and terrible narrative, so singular and so troubled that you may find it hard to believe that even as I tell it, even so it occurred. Do not think that I intrude one story before another is finished. As you read on, you will find that this is not so. And when I have detailed these distant events, and you have solved this mystery of the past, we shall meet once more in those rooms of Baker Street, where this, like so many other wonderful happenings, will find its end. Okay, and that is the end of part 1. I actually want to start part 2 next week. So yeah, so this is where we'll be ending. Let me pull up. Is our buddy still on? Let's see here. I think I'm gonna refresh just in case. Okay, we're not rating Yoshi. He is playing the new Digimon game, and I'm trying not to spoil myself. We need to find someone else. Okay, so we'll be rating Dr. Poe. He's doing co-working, writing. Yeah. So I say, all right, everyone. So we'll be continuing this next the story to Sunday. So that is our Sherlock Holmes reading. Yeah, so that's Sundays. Tomorrow I will be live with some writing. So whenever I get out of work, I have breakfast or something like that, then we'll be streaming. So I put estimate time of 10 in the morning as an estimate. And then we'll be live Friday with either a writing or maybe a game. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. So, like, yeah, I will see everyone then. Bye.